My name is Seva Weberg, and this is Catherine Van Houten. So welcome. I'm reading from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries of the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. Week 18. Perfection is self-transcendence. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. We begin this week with a passage from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 5. Love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. If ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the tax collectors the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even pagans go? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. This teaching is a continuation of last week's lesson. To love all equally is possible only by seeing God everywhere, in others as well as in oneself. See whatever comes to you unasked for as a manifestation of His will. Be grateful for the pains you experience, for they are healing strokes of His love. Sometimes healing is effected only by strong measures, but His love for you is manifested in the very attempt to heal. Strive always to be impersonal, as though whatever happens to you were happening to someone else. Persecution gives us the supreme opportunity to deny the thought, this is happening to me, and to affirm our inner freedom from the thought of ego. Don't allow the negative perceptions of others to become your own self-definition. Seek God. This is the true goal of life. Though how difficult to cling to in the midst of hatred, spite, and persecution. The Bhagavad Gita tells us in the 7th chapter, out of thousands one strives for spiritual attainment. And out of many blessed true seekers who strive assiduously to reach me, one, perhaps, perceives me as I am. O truth seeker, be one among all those thousands who seek the supreme goal. Thus, through the Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I'll add my welcome to that of Seva, lest you be alarmed. Peter is not ill, but he is very intensely involved in this moment in a project related to the clinic. So Seva graciously offered to take his place this morning. I'd like to begin by reading from Whispers from Eternity. Save me from wrong beliefs. I am lost, Father, in the wasteland of wrong beliefs. Where is my home? I have kept the doors of my soul always open, expecting Thee. Ah, I have not yet found Thee. Rise high in the sky to illuminate my darkness. Be the pole star to my searching mind, directing me to Thyself, for therein, I know, lies my home. The topic this morning, perfection is self-transcendence, is really, gets right to the heart of one of the most important realizations on the spiritual path. Having grown up in the Methodist Church as a daughter of a minister, I grew up surrounded very much by good people, and I attended church every Sunday, and I heard readings from the Bible, and I learned in Sunday school class, which I was forced to attend until a great battle took place between myself and my parents in high school. But I had this idea basically from all of this church background within the Protestant church that basically perfection meant this sort of like an antique dealer, this great collection of virtues. And I would get together a sufficient amount of honesty and lovingness and kindness and keep my patience a little bit more often than my neighbor did, perhaps. And I was going to be doing pretty darn good. But it never, of course, went beyond this. This concept of self-transcendence, thrilling concept. The heart of the path of yoga was not anything I encountered until I read the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. It was interesting. Some of you may have seen the most recent edition of Discover magazine. I don't know. I think a lot of people here actually subscribe to Discover. And I saw a little tiny book review. They usually review 4 or 5 books that are related to science, or science light, as my husband might call it. And it looked fascinating. In fact, I pre-ordered it, and some of you may have seen it, but it has to do with morality in animals. And it presents a number of, now again, this is a tiny book review. The book is due out this week, I believe, and I think it has the title, and I'm afraid I didn't think to mention this until I got here this morning, but it's something like The Appearance of Morality in Animals. And I'm afraid I also don't know the author. But very interestingly, that I'm sure you'll be able to find it, you Googlers. But it even cited, and evidently the book is full of case studies of animals who have been presented with situations in which they, as a unique animal, could be rewarded or experience pleasure. They could get an extra food pellet, even if it meant shocking another animal. So a squirrel would have the opportunity to press a bar, have a yummy little pellet roll down to its mouth, but a couple of other squirrels in the cage were going to be shocked if it received the food pellet. Now, I found this fascinating, but this book is evidently full of studies of the fact that squirrels, and then they cited a couple of other similar instances where animals were found to be unwilling to harm another creature, even for its own increased pleasure, even food, which we consider so very, very fundamental to existence. And I thought, how fascinating, because I think we'd always considered that morality, virtue, is unique to human beings. But in fact, according to this book, and which is backed up by a great deal of science, evidently, I'm eagerly awaiting my copy, shows us that animals as well are very much capable of what we might call philanthropic behavior that evidences compassion, the concept of compassion. So when we talk about virtue, in human beings there is this something unique, and we know as yogis that as yogis we have the refinement in the spine, our nervous system, to go beyond even morality to this transcendence, to go beyond consciously as an act of will, as an act of self-offering, the experience of the little self, the little ego, and reclaim what has always been our real nature as sons and daughters of God. And that is what self-transcendence is. And it was a concept that I have to say was never really mentioned in the Protestant church, except perhaps as something that would happen if you accumulated, as I mentioned before, like an antique dealer, a sufficient amount of virtue in various forms. Then when you left the body, perhaps you would go to heaven, and that was going to be your self-transcendence. So, as I said, this was the thrilling realization that came when I read the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. But how do we achieve this self-transcendence? And again, today's reading is incredibly helpful, and Swami Kriyananda, as usual, gives us very succinctly the steps that lead us to this. He says, first of all, that we must welcome with gratitude those tests, those, I think Swami Kriyananda even uses the word strokes of his love. Well, it sounds a little bit like a beating, in fact, that God's tests can come in forms that are actually very painful. But if we can stay in the memory, in the remembrance of the fact that this too is his desire to heal us of our ignorance, if we can stay in that gratitude, this is one of the first steps towards self-transcendence. We need to, he says, to meditate. We need to experience God and remember that we're part of him. And in this too, we'll find transcendence. And thirdly, he says, we can't pay too much attention to what other people think of us. We can't. And in fact, I stumbled a little over this because it didn't seem to have much to do with what other people thought. But as I thought about it, I think that Swami Kriyananda's deeper meaning here was the fact that we have to, in order to transcend the little self, we have to keep everything that comes to us as we have to remember that it's really between ourselves and God. It has nothing to do with other people. The tests that come to us, the particular forms, the ways that our own karma demands that God tests us in order that we may be free, that isn't going to look the same for any two people. And it's going to be easy for us to misunderstand what another's karma looks like. It's going to be easy to judge another, and it's going to be tempting to kind of fold up a little bit under that judgment from others. And when I thought about it, one of the experiences that comes along the path of self-transcendence is a kind of aloneness that can be very, very acute. And I don't think that there's one serious devotee sitting in this room who hasn't felt very, very alone in the particular way that they're being tested. But that too, that aloneness, it's no mistake that Ananda's theme song, Swami Kriyananda has said, is a song that he wrote entitled Go On Alone. And we might think superficially, well, of course that's Ananda's theme song, because after all, we're doing something a little different. We're out here in the country. We have 5 gurus on our altar that may not be immediately recognizable to others. We may have encountered the opposition of our family as we came onto the spiritual path, or friends, or people who thought we'd gone a little nutty. And so, yes, go on alone makes a lot of sense. But in fact, go on alone has a deeper meaning too, that as the tests, the strokes of God's love, as Swami Kriyananda puts it in today's reading, come to us, and as we receive them with gratitude, we also have to receive and accept the fact that at times we're going to feel pretty darn alone with whatever it is we're going through, because it's very private. So another step towards self-transcendence is accepting. It doesn't need to be lonely. I should make that point, though, as well. We need to accept it impersonally. It's an experience that we ourselves have generated by the nature of our past karma over many lifetimes. But the way that our tests come will be unique. And we have to stand firm with exactly what that test looked like, whether others can understand the test, can give us the right advice about the test. It's between us and God. And if we keep it there, we will stay in peace. And we may be alone and have to stand firm with alone, but we won't be lonely. It's interesting, this whole business of self-transcendence. I find it interesting that what we're trying to do when we talk about self-transcendence, which is nothing less than letting go of the idea of the individual Steve, the individual Vyasa, the individual Peter, and merging, offering ourselves back into spirit, the one. That is self-transcendence. And what a monumental task we've taken on willingly, every one of us sitting in this room. And yet it's hard to find a group of people who are harder on themselves than the group of people who've taken on what is really the ultimate task a human being can embrace. Being a brain surgeon, being president of the United States, whatever, nothing compared with saying, I no longer want to be this little thing craving its own desires, searching out its own pleasures in the face of everything else, making this world my sole reality. I'm through with that. What a huge task. And yet, how hard we can be on ourselves. So even while we're accepting the strokes of God's testing love, we also need to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. Again, impersonality is the key here. It's not a matter of being wimpy or settling for less. That's not the goal. But we should keep in mind that it's extraordinary what we've taken on. And if we stumble, if we fall, if we feel dry, and when I read this passage from the Bhagavad Gita about out of 1,000, one may seek me, I don't think also there's anyone sitting in the room who hasn't thought, I maybe am part of that 999, and I'm not so sure that I'm worthy to be one of the ones who honestly, sincerely, with all my heart seeks God in this lifetime. Of course, that thought out the window. We have to fight that one completely. But we have to be a little bit kinder and realize that naturally we're going to stumble under this huge, wonderful, and the only worthwhile task there is to undertake. It's what life is all about. But We need to be a little bit kind to ourselves. We need to realize, too, that God is in our corner on this. I spoke about aloneness, but like I said, it's between you and God. It's aloneness only in terms of other human beings. Although we're very blessed to have the best well-wishers surrounding us when we come into a fellowship of devotees. Nothing could be a more supportive environment. And yet, it is us and God. Us and God. Always and finally. But God, with Krishna in our chariot, who else do we need? And God is very, very much in our corner. I love a dream, and it's a dream that my husband had, and many years ago now, probably 15 or 20 years ago, and he shared it with many of you, but it is so perfect. It bears repeating. Every time I remember it, I nearly weep to think of its wonderful message. But Peter, in this dream, was walking across a field, and he encountered he was aware of himself as a spiritual seeker in the dream. And he encountered this huge black, kind of a mountain of coal or tar. He couldn't quite figure out what it was, but it was dark, and he didn't have a good feeling about it, and it was absolutely enormous. And he was drawn towards it, however, in his dream. He knew it had to do with him. And as a dreamer in the dream, and a spiritual seeker in the dream, as he drew close to it, he realized, this is my past karma. This huge mountain of coal, this sort of tar, sticky substance. And he drew near it, and he thought, I have to move this mountain of karma. And he looked around, no one. And he drew closer and closer, and he noticed at the base of this enormous mountain, this tickles me, a little plastic pail, like you might take down to the beach. So let's picture a little yellow bucket and a little blue plastic shovel, like a child would take to the beach to work on a sandcastle. And that was sitting, calling to him. And it was sitting at the base of the mountain of tar, and he knew it was his. This was his tool for getting rid of the mountain of tar, and which was his karma. And he knew it was his job to do so. In the dreamer, and being a great devotee, he said, okay. And he started in with his shovel and his pail, and he hadn't gotten very far, and he started hearing this enormous machinery noise behind the mountain. And it was loud, and it portended a truly monstrously impressive machine. And he was very curious, of course, so he walked around the mountain to the far side, and there, on the other side of the mountain, was Paramahansa Yogananda, master, on what we know as a skip loader. And so for those of you who don't know what a skip loader is, it is many times now I'm really falling down here because I can't compare it to much of anything. What? A steam shovel, a bulldozer. Okay. And sitting in the cab of this giant skip loader was Master. And Peter walked around the mountain with his little plastic pail and his little shovel, and Master looked up from his busy work with the skip loader on the back side of the mountain, and Peter looked around, and he saw that Master had already moved the whole back side of the mountain. In fact, what Peter was seeing from the front was almost a hollowed out shell that looked very daunting from his side. But Master with the skip loader had worked in the back and cleared away all of it. And the best part of the dream was, Peter said that he was looking at Master with just awe and love. And Master looked at him, and he just got the biggest smile on his face, and he just waved merrily to Peter like, "Isn't this fun? What an adventure we're having. Look at this big pile of mountain. Ugh. But this is fun. This is an adventure. See it that way." And Peter awoke at that point, and I don't know that he would say it was a super conscious dream, but I think I would. It's had a profound effect on Peter's life, and a lot of people who've heard it have said it's really moved them. So the masters are in our corner, and they want the best for us. So even though it's not possible for us, self-transformation is not a matter of stacking up a lot of virtue. It is the offering of ourself into the river of God's power. And it is God, ultimately, who carries us out of the ego. And it is only God's power that can do that. Although our part is very, very much working away with the little yellow plastic bucket and the little blue shovel. We have to do that part. But then Master is back there with the skip loader and working away with us. When I was preparing for today, I reread something that I can't recommend highly enough. This, of course, is a new edition of Whispers from Eternity, which has been published in the last half year by Crystal Clarity Publishers, and Swami Kriyananda did a fresh edition of it, and he added enormously to its accessibility, its dynamism, its vitality. It's more alive than ever. And I hadn't read, since he had worked on it, the article that's entitled "Watching the Cosmic Motion Picture of Life." And if you haven't reread this recently, I highly recommend it, because the final thing, and the other thing that Swami Kriyananda stresses in his reading from the Ray's reading this morning, is trying to distance yourself from whatever comes to you. This is another secret to self-transformation, to the perfection that we're really seeking, which is reunion with God. The way that he expresses it in today's reading is seeing everything that comes to you as really happening to another, if you possibly can. Remain inwardly free. Don't identify yourself with your mistakes. Don't identify yourself with your successes. See them as part of, as Master uses the image over and over again, a cosmic motion picture. And I wanted to just close today by reading from this new edition of Whispers, because it's so very moving and so exactly the attitude that will take us from our idea of what is essentially, we have the illusion that perfection can be of the ego. It cannot. Perfection is only from God. And we need to offer and put everything into his hands and see this as his life and his play. This is just a few paragraphs, and like I said, I can't recommend highly enough sitting down before a meditation and rereading this article on the cosmic motion picture. Our troubles usually arise from not knowing what part we are meant to play. A person with musical talent may take a step backward in evolution if he lets people's praise go to his head. He may do better, and in fact, it may be his true role designed for him by the director to use his natural sense of harmony, perhaps, by helping groups of people to work cooperatively together. How can one know what God wants? Uncertainty as to our life's role is due to carelessness in developing our innate, intuitive soul faculties. Even without that certainty, however, the director, and we have a capital D here, God, will certainly guide you if you approach him in the right way. Perhaps he will put you into circumstances that will help you to respond with discrimination to his guidance. First, however, you must offer yourself to him sincerely and cooperate willingly with the opportunities he gives you. Rouse, therefore, your own all-feeling, all-seeing wisdom by regular meditation, and ask earnestly to be shown your true role in life. As you watch the show, participate in and enjoy the part you yourself play. Watch everything that happens around you with equal appreciation. Whether events provide a delightful comedy of errors or a sequence of harrowing trials and difficulties, watch with an attitude of calm inner detachment. There is no place in the lives of God's children for pain, sorrow, grievance, complaints, or boredom. A person can, in retrospect, replay joyously all the noble parts of his life. Reflect that you can replay even the ignoble parts if you've the courage to rise above the shame and turn them to good purpose by resolving to improve in future. The great director of life's motion picture is bliss itself. We, his children, made in his image, should resolve to be ever blissful also in ourselves. From joy we came, in joy we live, in sacred joy we melt. Let's meditate for just a moment.